guys, welcome back to my channel. When I first moved from China to the US almost 4 years ago, I thought I had a pretty good idea of what to expect. You know, like bald eagles flying around in the skies, people eating burgers for breakfast, fries for lunch, pizza for dinner, every single day. Everything would be huge. The food, the drinks, the shirts. But when I actually got here, I quickly realized that what I imagined was just the surface. Living in the US has revealed a whole new world of surprises. Some interesting, some totally unexpected, and some just really bizarre. So in today's video, I'm going to share the biggest culture shocks I have experienced as a Chinese living in the US. Let's get started. Number 1, social interactions. First, friendly strangers and small talk. One of the first things that really surprised me when I moved to the US was how friendly strangers are. Like, really friendly. People wave at you, smile at you, say hi, or even ask, how's it going, when you have never met them before. At first, I honestly didn't know how to respond. I kept thinking, do I know this person? Are they talking to me? I experienced this a lot, especially when I was living in a smaller city. It felt so unusual to me. Back in China, this kind of interaction is pretty rare. We usually keep to ourselves in public places, no small talk, no eye contact, especially not in elevators or on the streets. So when someone randomly greeted me here, I was like, wait, what's going on? Now that I've been here a while, I've gotten more used to it. It's kind of nice actually. A simple smile or hello can make your day feel a little warmer, even if you're not having a conversation. Second, using first names with everyone. Another culture shock I have experienced after moving to the US was how casually people use first names, especially with authoritative figures. When I first came to study, my university professor told me to just call him by his first name, like hi Mike or hey Luke. I was so surprised. And later on, when I started working, my co-workers also addressed our boss by her first name, like hi Mary or hey Lucy. Honestly, it felt really strange at first. In Chinese culture, we usually don't call teachers or bosses by their first names, especially if they're older or have more experience than us. Instead, we put a title before their last name, like Teacher Li or Manager Wang, as a sign of respect. Calling someone older or in a higher position just by their first name in China can actually come across as disrespectful. So it definitely took me some time to get used to this more equal and casual way of addressing people in the US. Number 2, personal boundaries. First, touch norms are totally different. One thing really surprised me after moving to the US was how different touch norms are, especially when it comes to greetings. In the US, hugging is such a common way to say hi or goodbye, even with people you're not super close to. So when I first moved here, some of my friends and my husband's family, who all grew up in the US, would go in for a hug when we met or said goodbye. And honestly, I totally panicked. I had no idea that hugging was such a normal part of everyday interactions here. Looking back, I probably came off as super awkward or stiff because I just didn't know how to respond. In China, we don't really hug. Even with family or close friends, our culture tends to be more reserved when it comes to physical touch. Usually, a simple nod or a smile is enough when we are greeting or saying goodbye. So in those early days, every hug caught me off guard. I was just basically standing there like a stiff board. It took me some time to get used to it. But now I understand that it's just one of those cultural things. And honestly, I've grown to appreciate the warmth, the friendliness that comes with an American hug once I got past that awkward phase. Number 3, dining culture. First, ice water all year round. No matter where you go, whether it's a fancy restaurant, a casual diner, or even just a small cafe, they almost always serve you ice cold water. And it doesn't matter if it's 90 degrees Fahrenheit in summer or freezing cold in the middle of winter, you're still getting a glass full of ice. I know this is totally normal here, and most Americans don't even think about it twice. But coming from China, this was a huge culture shock for me. In China, it's super common to drink warm or even hot water, even during the summer. Like, if you walk into a restaurant, they usually serve you with hot tea or warm water automatically. And it's not just a preference, it's a cultural thing. It's tied to traditional Chinese medicine and beliefs around health and balance. There's also a bit of historical hygiene behind it too. If you're curious about that and want me to make a full video diving into why hot water is such a thing in China, let me know in the comments. I would love to explain more deeply. Anyway, when I first moved here, it was January. I was living in a super snowy, freezing place, and the cold just cut through everything. So imagine, you're freezing, and then you go to a restaurant, and they give you a huge glass of ice water. It was definitely a shock to my system. It took me a while to get used to it, from drinking hot or warm water year-round to drinking cold drinks all the time was one of those small but surprisingly hard adjustments. Second, tipping expectations. In the US, tipping is expected in a lot of situations, like at restaurants, for bartenders, delivery drivers, hairstylists, and more. And it's not just about tipping. You're also supposed to figure out how much to tip based on the service, which adds another layer of pressure. It's 15% okay? Should it be 20%? What if the service wasn't great? But where I am from, China, tipping isn't really a thing. It's not expected, and in some cases, it can even come off as awkward or rude. The price you see is the price you pay. That's it. If you want to show appreciation for good service, you might give a compliment, say thank you sincerely, or leave a nice review online. So as someone coming from no tipping culture, suddenly having to navigate who to tip, when, and how much, it was honestly very overwhelming at first. I still second guess myself sometimes, like, wait, do I tip here? Or was that too little? Again, it's one of those everyday things that seems small, but it really reminds me how different the norms are. Number 4, daily life. First, allergies are super common. After moving to the US, I realized how common allergies are here. I'm not just talking about the food allergies, though that's a big one, but also things like pet allergies, seasonal allergies, dust allergies. It feels like everyone I meet has some kind of allergy. Back in China, I barely ever heard people talk about allergies. It's just not something that comes up in everyday conversation. So at first, I thought maybe Chinese simply don't have as many allergies as people in Western countries. That was my honest assumption. But after living here longer and paying more attention to my own body, I started to see things differently. For example, this is kind of personal. I recently found out that I might be lactose intolerant. I have no idea. I grew up drinking milk, eating cheese and ice cream, and sure, sometimes I got an upset stomach after work, but I never thought it could be a food sensitivity or allergy. That connection just never occurred to me. Living in the US made me realize that many people in China might actually have allergies or intolerances. They just go unnoticed or undiagnosed. Most of the time, we don't think to question symptoms like stomach aches or rashes. We usually just assume it's something we ate or we're simply sensitive. So now I don't think it's that people in China don't have allergies. It's more like we're not as aware of them. And it's not part of our culture to talk about them openly. Anyway, that's just based on my personal experience and research. I'm really curious about what you think. Have you noticed this too, or had a similar experience? Let me know in the comment. I would love to hear your thoughts. Second, everyone uses a dryer. In the US, using a dryer is totally normal. Well, actually, it's pretty much expected in every household. But where I grew up in China, it's a different story. Most homes have a washing machine, but dryers are super rare. Instead, we usually hang our clothes to dry, either outside or on a balcony. It's just the way things are done. So when I first moved to the US, I wasn't used to using a dryer at all. I actually tried to hang my clothes on the balcony like I used to back home. But my American roommates quickly let me know that it wasn't allowed in our apartment complex. Apparently, some places here has rules against that. It was such a small moment, but it really made me feel how different everyday habits can be from one country to another. Number 5, school and learning culture. First, professors encourage questions. One of the culture shocks I faced as a Chinese student in the US was how professors not only encourage questions, but also genuinely welcome being challenged. Back in China, it's pretty normal for students to stay quiet in class. Just take notes and listen carefully. Silence is often seen as a sign of respect or thoughtfulness. Speaking up, especially to challenge a teacher or ask why, can sometimes feel like disrupting the harmony or questioning authority, which isn't always encouraged. But in the US, it's almost the opposite. Professors want you to speak up, ask questions, and share your opinions, even if they're different from theirs. When I studied at the university here, class felt more like a conversation between the professor and students, rather than a one-way lecture where the students just sit silently. At first, asking questions or even challenging my professor felt unfamiliar and a little bit uncomfortable because it was so different from what I was used to. It took me some time to adjust to this new way of learning where critical thinking and questioning are not only accepted, but also genuinely encouraged. Second, grades include group work and participation. Back in China, especially before college, most of our learning is very individual. You study on your own and your final exam basically determines everything. For example, in Chinese high school, we all prepare for the Gaokao, which is a college entrance exam. Your score on that one test decides which university you can attend. There's no essay, no extracurriculars, no recommendation letters. It's all about that one score. So when I came to the US, I was really surprised by how different the education system is here. In American schools, especially from kindergarten through 12th grade, your grade isn't just based on tests. Things like how much you participate in class, whether you do your homework, and even how well you work with others on group projects all count toward your final grade. When I first worked as a teacher in the US, I was honestly shocked. Students here are encouraged to speak up in class and share their opinions. In China, most students stay quiet unless they're called on, because we're taught to listen more than speak. It was a big cultural shift to see how much value is placed on collaboration and participation. Number 6, money and tech. First, no WeChat Pay or Alipay. In China, mobile payments are everywhere. Whether you're buying groceries, ordering food, or even shopping at a tiny fruit stand on the street, chances are you're just scanning a QR code to pay using WeChat Pay or Alipay. I got so used to this that I actually never carried a wallet with me. I just needed my phone, and that was it. For anyone who is unfamiliar with the Chinese payment system, WeChat Pay is a mobile payment system built right into the WeChat app. It lets you pay for things, send money to friends, and even handle bills, all within one app. Alipay is similar and just as popular. It's another digital wallet that you can use pretty much everywhere in China, both online and in physical stores. Together, these two platforms have basically made China a cashless society. So imagine my surprise when I came to the US and found out that people still use all kinds of payment methods, like cash, debit cards, credit cards, Venmo, Zelle, Apple Pay, Google Pay. It was honestly a bit overwhelming at first. It took me a while to figure out how and when to use each method. Like, when should I use a debit card versus a credit card? Why do some stores accept Apple Pay, but others don't? And what even is a checkbook? It's definitely a learning curve, especially coming from a place where digital payments are so streamlined and universal. But now I've gotten used to it already. Number 7, transportation. First, public transportation. When I first moved to the US, I lived in a pretty small city. It has some basic public transportation, mainly buses, but honestly, it was a big adjustment for me. Back in China, I was used to a super efficient and convenient public transportation system. Subways, buses, trains, they're everywhere and they run often. You don't really need a car to get around in most cities, but in the US, especially in smaller cities, things are very different. Since I didn't have a car when I first arrived, I had to rely entirely on the bus system. And that came with a lot of challenges. I had to plan everything ahead of time, check the bus schedule, make sure I didn't miss it, and be prepared to wait a long time if I did. On top of that, bus stops weren't always nearby, so I'd also have to walk quite a bit just to get to one. Sometimes I feel like I spend more time trying to get somewhere than actually being there. In China, you can usually count on public transit to be fast, frequent, and super accessible, even in smaller cities. But in the US, unless you're in a major city like New York, Chicago, or maybe Seattle, public transportation often isn't a main part of daily life. Most people rely on cars, and everything is kind of spread out. This was definitely one of the biggest culture shocks, which is realizing how much harder it is to get around without a car in many parts of the US. Second, pumping your own gas. In China, most gas stations are full service. That means when you pull in, an attendant comes over and fills up your tank for you. You just stay in the car and wait. But in the US, almost every gas station is self-serve. That means you need to get out, swipe your card, choose the fuel type, and pump the gas yourself. So when I got my first car here in the US, I was actually kind of nervous about filling up the gas tank myself since I had never done that before. I actually asked my friend to come with me the first time, just in case I messed something up. I mean, I didn't want to accidentally cause a fire or spill gas everywhere. It felt like such a serious thing. Now, of course, pumping my gas feels totally normal. But in the beginning, it was definitely one of those little culture shocks that made me realize how different everyday life can be in another country. Number 8, identity. First, cultural awareness. After moving to the US, I realized how little or sometimes how much people here know about China. For example, I once met someone who grew up in the US, and he started talking to me about Confucianism. Honestly, I was shocked. Not in a bad way, but genuinely surprised. Quick side note in case you're not familiar with Confucianism. Confucianism is a philosophy that started over 2,000 years ago in China by a thinker named Confucius. It's more like a way of living than a religion, and it focuses on values like respect, family, and responsibility. The funny thing is, I can barely explain Confucianism in Chinese clearly, let alone in English. So hearing someone who didn't grow up in China bring it up so casually just blew my mind in the best way. On the flip side, I've also met people who aren't very familiar with China at all, like really starting from zero.
So are you Chinese or Japanese?
I live in California last 20 years, but first come from Laos.
Huh?
Laos. We lay ocean.
The ocean? What ocean?
We are lay ocean. From Laos. It's a landlocked country in Southeast Asia. It's between Vietnam and Thailand, okay? Population 4.7 million.
So are you Chinese or Japanese?
Oh.
Honestly, it's totally understandable. Everyone grows up with different experiences and exposure, so it just reflects the wide range of cultural awareness out there. What I've learned from this is that I should never judge someone just by how they look. Someone who seems clueless might actually know a lot, while someone who appears very knowledgeable might not know as much as you expect. It's all part of getting to know people and their stories. Second, a whole new layer to my identity. Now, this is the last and honestly the most meaningful and important culture shock I want to share with you guys. Back in China, I never thought of myself as a Chinese in a way that defined me. I mean, sure, I knew I was Chinese, but it didn't feel like a label or something that made me stand out. Everyone around me shared the same routines. We all used chopsticks, ate rice almost every day, celebrate Chinese New Year together. It just felt normal. I never really questioned it because it was just how life was. But after moving to the US, something shifted. Those little habits and preferences I'd always taken for granted suddenly became the things that set me apart. My food choices, the way I communicate, even the values I grew up with. Everything started to highlight how different I was in this new environment. It's a strange feeling, like your background suddenly becomes more visible because everything around you is unfamiliar. And then it hits you. Wait, I really am different. Those parts of me that felt so ordinary back home are actually what made me unique here. Living in the US made me realize that being Chinese in China meant just blending in, being part of the crowd. But being Chinese in the US means carrying your culture with you everywhere you go. It's something you sometimes have to explain, defend, or even rethink. Moving to a new country definitely comes with its challenges. And honestly, these culture shocks have helped me to grow, made me laugh, and open my eyes to seeing the world in a whole new way. All the culture shocks I am sharing today come from my personal experiences and reflections, so they don't represent anyone else's journey since everybody's experience is so unique. I'm definitely not saying that living in the US or China is better or worse, or that I'm unhappy in either place. Each country has its own strengths and challenges. I feel truly grateful for the opportunity to live in both the US and China, because each place has taught me important lessons and helped me grow in unique ways. I would love to hear from you what culture shock surprised you the most, or if you're living abroad too, what's your biggest culture shock? Feel free to share it in the comments. Thank you so much for spending time with me and watching this video. If you enjoyed it and found it relatable, please give it a like, leave a comment, or subscribe. I will see you in the next one. Bye!